We have tons of NHL news and rumors to take a look at here today, including some more further updates on Pettersson and his future with the Vancouver Canucks. We have some very interesting remarks from a former Canuck player himself who was teammates with both JT Miller and Pettersson, explains what he believes is going on in Vancouver and what might come from it. Of course, we'll talk about some potential destinations for Pettersson as well, should that ever come to be. Plus, we know Detroit and Buffalo were heavily scouting each other before the NHL took their holiday break. We have a little bit more information suggesting what that might have been all about. Plus, Predators' young forward Zachary L'Heureux is facing a pretty, lengthy suspension after a major tripping slew-footing incident against the Minnesota Wild and their captain, Jared Spurgeon. Plus, we have the quarter-century teams have been starting to be announced by the NHL. We have the 3 stars of December and the Rookie of the Month as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here today. All kinds of information and news put out by the NHL here on January the 1st, 2025. So it's New Year's Day. Hope you all had a happy and healthy, safe New Year's Eve, and wish you all the happy and healthy New Year here in 2025. I certainly want to thank you again for all your support throughout 2024 and helping the channel grow. And let's hope that that can continue throughout 2025 and we continue to see growth and continue having fun making these videos and kind of grow our community here. Lots of news. Let's start first with some of the announcements from the NHL. The Rookie of the Month for the month of December is Montreal Canadiens rookie defenseman Lane Hudson. Hudson's certainly very much in the Calder conversation, if you will, along with first overall pick Macklin Celebrini, Matvei Michkov in there as well, and a few others. Hudson ended up playing in 14 games in the month of December, putting up 2 goals and 11 assists. Certainly a very dynamic playmaker back there and certainly helping generate a lot of the offense. So he continues to put up a lot of assists, helping set up his teammates for a lot of different scoring opportunities. The 3 stars of the month are Avalanche forward Nathan MacKinnon, Oilers forward Leon Draisaitl, and Devils goalie Jacob Markstrom. MacKinnon ended up putting up 25 points in 13 games, while Leon Draisaitl put up 24 points in 13 games, and Jacob Markstrom put up 8 wins, a 1.3 goals against average, and a .937 save percentage. A little bit surprised. Markstrom had a great month. I'm a little bit surprised on the snub to Linus Ullmark, who was also put up 8 wins and actually had a better save percentage, faced more shots, made more saves. So certainly interesting. Clearly, I think Markstrom played just a smidge more, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. They all had fantastic months. As I mentioned, of course, we had the Winter Classic yesterday on New Year's Eve, which is still, from a scheduling perspective, I find it quite weird. We had 13 games yesterday, including the Winter Classic smack dab in the middle of the day, around all these other games. And then today on New Year's Day, we have one game which is ongoing as a record. It's between New Jersey and Los Angeles. Why would they not make a bigger deal and put more eyeballs on the Winter Classic on a day like today? I don't understand it. I don't get why they would do that. It's not like they're using a baseball stadium in Wrigley Field, so it's not like there would be venue issues or anything like that. But yeah, definitely weird from that sense. But because of the Winter Classic, they started announcing what they're calling the quarter-century teams. Now, we had reported back about maybe a month ago or so that the NHL was going to be starting to do this as the calendar flipped to 2025. They were going to be looking at the first 25 years of the current century and naming the first and second basically all-star teams for each NHL franchise. So they started with Chicago and St. Louis being the 2 teams in the Winter Classic. I'll show you these here, the graphics that the NHL put out on the screen and go through. So the Chicago Blackhawks first team is the 3 forwards are Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, and Patrick Sharp. So no huge surprise there. I'm a little surprised on Patrick Sharp. I guess maybe if you look at the amount of time he played there, because on the second team you've got Marian Hossa. I thought Hossa's impact might have been significant enough to get him on the first team. But first team is Kane, Sharp, and Toews. Keith and Seabrook on the back end, no surprise there. Those 2 guys had tremendous runs during the heyday of the Blackhawks when they were winning Stanley Cups. And, of course, Corey Crawford, definitely the best goaltender of the past quarter century here as well. The second team all-star for the Chicago Blackhawks includes Marian Hossa, Brandon Saad, and Alex DeBrincat. On the back end, we've got Brian Campbell and Chalmerson. Of course, Chalmerson very instrumental in their Stanley Cup wins as well. Campbell logged a lot of minutes as well. Jocelyn Thibault, an interesting selection between the pipes. So certainly, like I said, with Chicago, I think they're all deserving to be there. Just a little surprised in a way that Sharp and Hossa weren't flip-flopped. Of course, this is chosen by members of the media and executives around the NHL, I believe. So, so some good picks there. Obviously, lots of great success for that franchise in the early part of the 2000s. In St. Louis, their first team includes Alexander Steen, Vladimir Tarasenko, and Keith Tkachuk. Of course, Tkachuk played a lot with the Blues early going here of this current century. On the back end, we've got Alex Pietrangelo, former captain, and Chris Pronger, who was dominant in his day as well. And, of course, Stanley Cup winning goaltender Jordan Binnington. The second team's former captain, David Backes, along with Selke Trophy winner and playoff MVP Ryan O'Reilly, and then David Perron, who certainly had some good seasons there with the Blues as well. Al McInnes, his time might not have been, obviously he played a lot with the Calgary Flames before arriving in St. Louis, but still had a very big impact on his time there. And Colton Parayko was the other defenseman. Of course, Parayko's been there a long time now, part of their big part of their Cup championship. And then goaltender Brian Elliott. Elliott had a great run, put up some fantastic numbers. And when they had the tandem of Elliott and Jake Allen, I think that might have been the best tandem that they've had during this century myself. I know that to me was the best that we saw out of Jake Allen as well. I think being in a tandem with Brian Elliott was phenomenal for him, and they were able to kind of compete off each other. And they played a lot of times a 50-50 split, but Elliott's numbers were fantastic. That was the best hockey of his career was during his time with the St. Louis Blues, no doubt. Then, of course, today we got the Arizona Coyotes. So, of course, this franchise is currently, I don't know what you want to call it. I guess it's on pause or it's not currently active or whatever you want to call it. But, of course, some great Coyotes over the years, including the forward group of Team 1, first team All-Star Shane Doan. And, of course, we got Clayton Keller, current member of Utah, who played the last season in Arizona, and Radim Verbata. On the back end, you got Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Keith Yandel and goalie Mike Smith. The second team for the Arizona all-quarter century team, Jeremy Roenick, Martin Hansel, and current Utah player and played last year in Arizona, Nick Schmaltz. So, of course, Keller and Schmaltz, the only two active members of the Utah team that were played the last season in Arizona to be in this group here. On the back end, you got Zbigniew Michalek and Teppo Numminen, followed in goal by Ilya Bryzgalov. He was quite the character, and will be certainly lots of jokes and memes around him over the years for sure. So those are your first and second teams for those three franchises. The NHL will continue to announce these throughout the month of January until all 32 teams are covered. So as I mentioned, we got lots of other news around the NHL today as well. First, let's go through some injuries and some roster moves. The Carolina Hurricanes today recalled Juha Jaska. So I think this will be his first recall. The Minnesota Wild had to make some moves today as well. Kirill Kaprizov's been officially moved to IR. He wasn't previously, but he has missed the last couple of games. That's going to be a retroactive move. He's going to miss the upcoming 2-game trip. They had to do that to create some space. Jared Spurgeon, of course, who went down with a looked to be serious injury in their last game against Nashville, also going to be out for a while. We don't have a full diagnosis yet there, but certainly not good at all. They've also recalled Carson Lambos and Brendan Gaunce. As I mentioned, Nashville Predator forward Zachary Lheureux has a hearing tomorrow for the tripping / slew foot against Captain Jared Spurgeon. It definitely looked intentional, looked dirty. I have no doubt there's going to be suspension for at least a couple of games. I don't think it's going to be too severe. He doesn't have any real history in the NHL, but he does have quite a rap sheet from his time in junior, a little bit in the American Hockey League, but his time in the Quebec League with the Mooseheads, he was disciplined numerous occasions. I think it was 9 times, if I'm not mistaken, for a variety of different types of incidents. He certainly has had his issues with discipline and keeping us cool. So not good on his front. Obviously, like I said, the injury to Spurgeon looks serious. The Minnesota Wild suddenly find themselves facing a lot of adversity And obviously the injuries are starting to pile up here, and it could play a big role into how the second half of their season goes, and could affect their position in the standings. I think they're pretty safe. They'd have to play a big run of horrible hockey to lose out on the playoffs, but could greatly impact their position in the standings and where they finish. So we'll have to see. Obviously, they're going to be well tested here with all the stuff they're going through, for sure. In Philly, we got Flyers goalie Sammy Erson's listed as day-to-day, and the Avalanche have put Oliver Shillington on IR, which is actually retroactive to the end of November, surprisingly, and they've recalled Oscar Olofsson. So I'm not sure why it took so long for Shillington to go on IR. He may end up shortly here on LTIR, so we'll see where that goes. Now, as I mentioned, on the trade front, we're going to talk about two scenarios. One, we're going to talk about Detroit and Buffalo. We'll start there, and then we're going to talk a little further about the Pettersson Miller stuff in Vancouver, which I didn't expect to see any new updates or new information today, but here we are. As Elliot Friedman had reported prior to the Christmas holiday break, Buffalo and Detroit were scouting each other quite extensively. There was some belief that they might have been getting close on a trade, but they didn't get the sense from the NHL insiders that anything was really imminent. But the amount of scouting that was going on is certainly at a point where discussions were looking like they were probably going to continue at this point. The belief now that we've heard is that Detroit has interest in Dylan Cozens. Now, we don't know exactly what Buffalo is looking for in return, but we know they're not real keen on moving Dylan Cozens. They certainly don't want to sell low, but as we've mentioned before, guys like Cozens and Byram are getting a ton of attention around the NHL from other teams for a couple of reasons. One, the Sabres are very low in the standings. Unfortunately, it's trending right now like they're on pace to miss the playoffs yet again. I think it's 14 years running, which is terrible for the fan base there, but it's trending that way. They're near the bottom of the standings in the Eastern Conference again. So teams are looking and saying, okay, what do they want to do? Clearly, it's not working with what they have there. Change of some sort likely coming. Cozens and Byram are the targets. Cozens because he's struggling. Teams look at him and see the talent and think, well, we can help him refine his game, and we could maybe get a buy low situation and really benefit. And in Byram's case, it's a case where, there's some talk if Buffalo can really keep him based on what he's going to want for his new contract. He's an RFA coming up this summer, and that they might end up moving him anyway. So, lots of talk. Or if they don't move Byram, they might have to move another defenseman. And, are they going to move a guy like Owen Power? Yeah, I don't know, right? I mean, you wouldn't think there's a big appetite to do that. But at the same time, it's something that's going to have to give there with the Sabres, which is why they're getting all the interest from around the league. So, again, we don't know what Detroit would offer for Dylan Cozens. I can understand why they would have interest, but it's going to take a significant offer. There's no doubt. I know at one point it was believed that a player like Jonathan Berggren was available, but it's certainly going to take a lot more than that to get them to bite. I don't know exactly what the Sabres would want. I'm going to suspect that if they did move Cozens, they're going to probably want, a good young forward, or at least maybe not necessarily young, but a good, solid forward, not, mid-20s or something back, which is going to be tricky to do, right? It's not like the Red Wings are going to be able to offer up their bad contracts and say, take Andrew Kopp, and give us Cozens. That's not going to work. So, interesting to see how this plays out or what the offers do, but it looks like Yzerman has interest in Cozens. I don't know if they can make it work. There's also some belief as well that Detroit could have interest in a guy like Byram, because clearly their blue line is an area of need as well. So, from what we heard, Cozens was the main piece, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're looking at Byram too. But again, what would a package deal like that cost? It would be big assets, and I don't know that Detroit is going to want to give that up, or do they really get better? It's kind of confusing. We'll have to see how these two teams trend here in the next few weeks, or if this scouting continues. We'll have to wait. Now on to Pettersson stuff. Now, interesting podcast interview on the Missing Curfew guys with Shane O'Brien and Scotty Upshaw with former Canuck Brad Richardson. Now, Richardson wasn't there super long time. He was picked up on waivers when Bruce Boudreau was the coach. Only spent like a half a season there or something. So either way, it's long enough that he knows what that room is like. And of course, Miller and Pettersson were both there at the time, so he's seen firsthand what was going down. And of course, we've heard comments from Rick Tocchet. We've heard comments from Quinn Hughes acknowledging that these two guys don't really seem to love each other and don't seem to get along and have a bit of a rift between them of some sort. But yet then both these guys talk publicly and they basically shut it down. And then we get comments from Patrick Alvin in the Sportsnet article with Ian McIntyre just in the last day or two here. And like I said yesterday when we talked about it, I kind of felt like it was almost like him taking shots at Pettersson, saying, you need to not only be better, but he said, like, Pettersson needs to realize it's not going to get any easier. He needs to mature. Just to me, some pretty, interesting comments. It sounds like to me that internally, a lot of people are siding with Miller, and they want to see Pettersson kind of toughen up, mature, and just kind of get more into the fight here with the team. And I get the feeling that they're kind of calling him, or that there's some people that think he's a little soft. Based on the comments from Brad Richardson, he said himself that he told JT Miller, because he could see them interact and how JT Miller's quite the animal and just, so passionate, and he can be hard on his teammates, trying to push them to be their best. And I think a lot of it is not so much what he wants to do or what he says, it's how it's done. And, he told, Richardson says he told JT Miller himself that he was being too hard on Pettersson. Not so much that he was wrong for doing it, but that he didn't think Pettersson was the type of guy that was going to receive that kind of feedback, critique, or whatever motivation in the right way, and that he was going to end up shutting him down and they were going to risk losing him if it continued. And this was a few years ago. So, imagine how this is going to build over time. So, we know that athletes today are not always the same as they were years ago. Coaching has changed. The way coaching has been delivered, the feedback, it's all changing. And it just seems like today's athlete is the way they like to do things, the way they like to get their coaching and feedback. It just, not all, I'm not going to generalize here because not everybody's the same, but it just seems like largely there's a lot of people that like things different. Like back, when I was a kid playing sports, it wasn't unusual for the coach to be yelling and hollering in your ear, obviously we all, everybody in my age group are older will say, like, we all survived, we got through it, and that's all fine and dandy, but it doesn't always mean it's the best way, right way, whatever, right? And today's people like to be different, and they don't want that kind of coaching. So, if Miller is going to be on his teammates to push harder and, depending on how intense he is in that room, it just seems like a lot of it's really rubbing Pettersson the wrong way. And that they just don't feel like he's, I don't know what the word would be, but just not receptive at all to that type of stuff. And he, instead of, that he's kind of shutting down. So, Richardson felt in his comments, he said that he felt like it was something eventually was going to have to come to a head, and that changes are likely going to have to be made. And the boys on the show, they were all kind of siding with Miller, saying that he's the kind of guy you win with. And for them to trade Miller because of Pettersson's sensitive side or what have you would be wrong and not great of the team. They understand that Pettersson's younger and all that, but that Miller's the kind of guy you win with. So it's some interesting takes for sure. And like I said, the comments from Patrick Alvin in that Sportsnet article yesterday, it kind of, to me, like I said, almost sounded like, I'm not really sure. Like I said yesterday, I said I kind of felt like it was their way of saying we want a resolution to this and we want it ASAP, and that if not, we're prepared to make changes. It just really makes you wonder what's going on in that room. I know even listening to John Shannon today, he spoke on the Segarra and Price show, and he said even after everything he's heard from everybody in the last little bit here, he still doesn't think Pettersson's at risk to be moved. But again, his no trade protection kicks in after when next season begins, which would be after July 1st. If they're going to make a move, it likely would have to come before then. We know before he signed his long-term contract They were close to doing it then because they were concerned he wasn't going to sign, so they were doing their due diligence to be ready. We know teams like the Hurricanes were very interested. Wouldn't shock me to find out a team like Detroit, who's going after a top center in Buffalo and Dylan Cozens, would they want, they've had a lot of history with some top Swedish players. Would they, not just because he's Swedish, because he's a great player and has star power here, but with the Swedish connection in Detroit could be even more enticing. Would they be a player here? Looking at teams that are kind of building up, for a $10 million contract, it's not going to be easy for a contending team to take on. You look to a team like the Rangers, for example, who we know are going to be making significant changes, or at least rumored to be. I don't know that Pettersson's a good fit for the New York Rangers. Look at what's going on there and how, everything that's going on with them. I don't know that he could handle it. I mean, I could see why they would want JT Miller back, but Pettersson, I don't know. I think that market might eat him alive. Look how he's doing in Vancouver. Vancouver could be a really tough market. I don't know that the Rangers would be a good spot for him, to be honest. So, the Islanders are a team that I know needs to turn over the roster. I've seen some, there was just some mock trades talking amongst the fan base. Would you trade Noah Dobson for him? Or would you trade Matt Barzal? Something like that. They might be able to put together an interesting package, perhaps. Hard to say. Obviously, they don't have a lot of prospects, but I don't think the Canucks will be looking for a future-based package if they move Pettersson anyway, because they want to stay in their, competitive mode right now. So taking a step back would be a major thing for if they move Pettersson for future base, right? So interesting topic for sure. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm sure Vancouver is certainly going to take their time, be patient here, but it sounds like the patience might be running out a little bit based on the comments from Alvin in that article and then everything. It just seems to be coming to a close here. So let me know what you think is going to come. If Pettersson is traded, where do you think he should go? What teams make the most sense? Do the Islanders, the Red Wings, the Sabres, are they the teams that would be the most likely trying to make a blockbuster type trade with the Canucks for this player? Now, Buffalo might be an interesting option for him. Clearly, where they had to move Jack Eichel a couple of years back, maybe this is a move for the Sabres to bring back a real top-notch center. Imagine Pettersson and Tage Thompson 1-2 down the middle. That's a pretty lethal center duo, if I don't say so myself. And they've got lots of young players there that might make things interesting in a trade package as well. So be curious to see what everybody thinks. Let me know down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.